So we're thinking about this message, I am loved by God, and that how to truly understand what it means to be loved by God. We need to have a better definition of love. And I think we find such a definition in the Bible, in a book called 1 Corinthians, in chapter 13, verses 4 to 7. So this book is written by a guy called Paul. He's a leading early Christian, and he's writing to the church in the city of Corinth in Greece. And this church aren't very good at loving one another. If you recognise this passage when it's read out, you may recognise it from weddings. It's quite often read at weddings, and we kind of think of this as a really good example of how to love, and it is. But it comes from a situation where people were actually really bad at loving each other, and Paul says, no, you're living wrong. You need to love like this. So I think we've got some cubs and some scouts ready to do some readings. Aha, here we go. So if you could read for us 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 to 7.
Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think in this passage, Paul is giving us a number of things that love is, and a number of things that it is not. And I wonder if you can help me spot them. I think here there are 7 things that love is, and 8 things that it is not. We're going to have the passage back on the screen, I think. There we go. Hopefully that's big enough for you to see. Can you spot some of the things that Paul says love is? If you think you see one, put your hand up, and then we can call it out. Caleb. Always protects. Very good. So protection, willing to put yourself in harm's way for others. That's what today's all about, isn't it? Protection. People who've been willing to protect those that they love. And actually, God is working for our good. He is fighting our battles continually. He is protecting us. We read in another book that Paul wrote called Ephesians, how God gives us armour to protect us in this world. He gives us a belt of truth, a breastplate of righteousness, a shield of faith, a helmet of salvation. He is continually protecting us from things that are going on in the world. Okay, we've got protection. Yep. Patience. Love is patient. Very good, the first one. Now, when we're patient with something, we're waiting, aren't we? We're good at waiting. I don't know if anyone here feels they're not very good at waiting. I sometimes feel like that myself. But here we read that love is patient. Good at waiting. You're not losing interest. You're not getting angry easily. How old are you? Yeah, 10. So do you know that means that for 10 years, God has been patient with you? For all the good things you've done, for all the bad things that you've done, I'm surely not too many, for all the times that you've listened well to your parents, for all the times that you've maybe not, for all the times that you've followed God well, and all the times that you haven't, God has been patient with you. It's my birthday this week. I'm turning 25 years old, and that means that for 25 years, so 2.5 times as long as he has for you, God has been patient with me, whilst I have definitely failed him time and time again. I know that there's some people here that are a bit older than 25. I won't call them out, but that means God's been patient with them for that long too. And if we look at the Bible, we see thousands of years of God being patient with his people. God is patient and loves us in that way. Okay, we've had a couple of things that love is. I wonder if someone can spot for me something that love isn't. Okay, we'll go for another one that is. It is kind. Very good. So kindness, that's a practical love. We think of acts of kindness. And I think it's also a service without expectation of reward. And God is so kind to us. He's given us so many good things. Everything that we see around us is a thing that God has created and put in our lives. All the clothes, the food, the money, the people that we have around us, the entire world is God's act of kindness in creation. And there's so many other ways that God is kind for us. Okay, we've had 3 things now that love is. do we think we can find something that love isn't or love does not? Evil, yes, it is. Delighting in evil. It does not delight in evil. Very good. So, when we delight in evil, we delight in doing something that goes against God's commands. But God is a holy God. That means he's set apart from all unholy things, all evil things. He's separated from such things, and therefore he can't delight in those things because he can't be anywhere near them. It's contrary to his very nature. So he loves us by only wanting holy, good, set-apart things for us. Okay, let's have another thing that love is not or does not. Yeah. Sorry? Easily angered. Yes, that links to the patience we had earlier, isn't it? God does not get easily angered with us, because again, if God got easily angered with us, we'd have been in trouble long ago. But we read in the Bible that our God is slow to anger and rich in love. That doesn't mean that anger is always a bad thing, but being slow to anger and rich in love is at the very heart of God. Okay, let's get a few more. Let's get one more thing that love is. Something else that love is. Yeah, also at the back. It is not proud. Yes. So I'm going to group a few of these things together. Being proud, being boastful, being envious. Those are three things that love does not or is not. And I think these are all things that involve putting ourselves above other people. Think about it. When you are envious, you want something that someone else has. You don't want them to have it. You want it. When you're boasting, you're showing off the things that you have going, don't you wish you had them like me? When you're being proud, you're putting yourself above others. But God doesn't do any of these things in the way that he loves us. He doesn't envy us, but delights in us being blessed and having good things. He doesn't boast, even though he'd have every right to. He is creator. He is the greatest being there ever could, will be. And yet he humbles himself. The opposite of all these things is humility. He humbles himself. He came down to earth in the form of Jesus, and he humbles himself and came not to be served, but to serve, and to give himself as a ransom for many. Okay, I think we probably have time for one more thing. One more thing. Can anyone spot anything else? Yeah. Love is kind. We've already had love is kind. Can we spot another one? It is not self-seeking. Very good. Thank you, Linda. So again, we thought about that just now, didn't we? The opposite of being envious and proud and boastful is being humble, being not self-seeking, which is not caring for the needs of others, but deeply caring for the needs of others. And again, Jesus did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Very good. I think we've got basically all the ones I want to talk about. Apart from one, I think I'm going to touch on one more very quickly. Love keeps no record of wrongs. And that's very important for something we're going to think about later. Love doesn't store things up to use them later. I know I'm sometimes tempted to do that. I'm like, I remember that. I'll call that up later if I have a grievance with you. But no, love doesn't store up. It doesn't keep up a record of wrongs. Because if God kept a record of our wrongs and still claimed to love us when we're in a relationship with him, then we'd, again, be in big trouble. But once we've turned from our wrong way and turned towards God and followed him, he clears away the list of our wrongs and he remembers them no more. And that's something very important. We're going to touch on that again later. And finally, it's not on the screen, but right after this passage, there is one more line as we go into the next passage, and it says, love never fails. Love never fails. We've just sung a song about that. Your love never fails. It never gives up. It never runs out on me. And I think that's really important to remember. In all these ways that love is patient, love is kind, and so on, that doesn't run out. It never fails. God's love never fails. Okay, so you've got your booklets, and if you open up your booklets, you'll see 2 pages, one titled I Am Loved and one titled I Will Love. So in response to some of the things we've been looking at in this passage, if the passage could actually stay up on the screen for a second, sorry, I'm going to invite you just to spend a minute, write or draw 3 ways that God has shown his love for you. So that might have been something that's particularly grabbed your attention from this passage. Maybe you think, yeah, God really is patient with me, and you can write that down. Or maybe it's something that you've experienced in your life. You've seen a way that God has loved you, and you want to remember that. So we're going to have a minute, write or draw 3 ways that you think God has shown his love to you. And then after that minute, I think we're going to sing another song. Okay, I will hand over to Andrew at that point. But yeah, if you've got one of these booklets, if you've not got a booklet or a pen, I think there's some on the table over there. But yeah, 1 minute to write down 3 ways that God has loved you. So, back to thinking about this sentence, this phrase, I am loved by God. Earlier we looked at a definition of love from 1 Corinthians chapter 13. And I think it's a really good definition because it goes into detail, so much detail, and gives us so much to think about when we think about that phrase, I am loved by God. But the problem with a really good, deep, long definition is that it can be quite hard for us to actually remember. I wouldn't expect you to remember all 15 things, 16 things even, that we looked at. But fortunately, God is gracious to us, and he gives us a shorter but still amazing definition of love found in another part of the Bible. So now we're going to look at a short verse, just one verse, from 1 John chapter 3, verse 16. And it goes like this. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. Oh, here we see the very heart, the very nature of God's love for us. He laid down his life for us. He sacrificed himself for us. You see, in the beginning, God created us in his image. What a blessing, what an act of kindness that is, to be created in the image of God. But we messed up. We turned away from God, and we created a divide between us and him. That divide was created by the wrong things that we had done, by turning away from him. And you see, the problem was, although we had created that divide, we did the things that created it, we couldn't overcome it. We couldn't bridge back over that divide that separated us from God. And God can't ignore the things that we've done wrong, because that would make him unjust. We know that love delights in truth. And God would be lying to himself if he just ignored the wrong things that we had done. That wouldn't be love. But instead of taking the punishment that we deserved for those wrong things that we've done, because he loves us, he died for us in our place. That is an act of kindness that we could never repay. It's humility that we don't deserve. It's a protection that can never be broken, a hope that is greater than any other in the world. This is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his love for us. You can see how a lot of these things that we talked about from the 1 Corinthians passage are summed up, shown in their greatest ever example in the sacrifice of Jesus, laying down his life for us. And yet, I think such a love requires a response, doesn't it? Well, this is what it means for us to say, I am loved by God. I think it requires a response. It would be rude not to. Imagine we've got a couple, a man and a woman. They're deeply in love, and they go to this beautiful outcrop. And the guy, he gets down on one knee, he pulls out a magnificent ring that's cost him lots of money, and he says those words, will you marry me? Her response, oh, I'm not really feeling it today, actually. Maybe come again next week. Oh, sorry, I think I need to focus on myself at the moment. I really need to put myself first. Come back in a few years, when I've lived my life, and then maybe I'll think about settling down. Oh no, what an embarrassment that would be. How wrong would that be if that was the response to the question? Just a brushing off, ignoring how deep that relationship is, how much the guy had sacrificed, and even if you wanted to love him but you just couldn't be bothered. No, that would be the wrong response in that situation. And yet it's so often how we respond to God. Oh, think about that when I'm older. That's something for the adults to think about. That's something for me to think about in retirement. Yet that is not the response that we should be giving to God. You see, he gave himself for us and he calls us to himself. He says, come, turn from your old way, the way that created that divide, and come and follow me. How will you respond to that invitation of God to follow him in light of the love that he has shown you in sacrificing himself for you? I would argue that the correct response to God's love for you is to admit your wrongdoings, accept his sacrifice for you, paying the price for the wrongs that you've done, and live for him. That would be the correct response to God's love. And as we see in this verse that can we have back up on the screen, please, from 1 John, as an outflowing of that is an outflowing of the response that we have to God for his love for us. We are to love those around us. In light of Jesus laying down his life for us, we're to lay our lives down for those around us. We first respond to God. That's the most important thing. But then we respond in love to those around us. I wonder how you might be able to do that, even this week. Are there people that you could give your time, your talents, your efforts, your money? Are there those that you could show patience and kindness to? Those that you could serve, those who you could easily get angered by, but you're going to stay calm and you're going to show the love of God to them. Well, as we draw near to the end of the service, if you get your booklet out again, you'll see on the third page there's a title that says, I will love. I will love. And I want you to write two things down here. First of all, and most importantly, I want you to think about how you are going to respond to God in light of his love for you. How are you going to respond to God in light of his love for you? And then secondly, maybe we can think about and write a few things down of how we can show God's love to those around us, those in need, those that God has placed around us so that we might love them this week. So we're going to have a minute to think about those things, how we're going to respond to God and his love, and how we're going to show his love to those around us. And then I'm going to pray, and then we're going to move on towards the end of the service. So 1 minute to think about how we're going to respond to God's love. I encourage you to think about this further, maybe when you get home throughout the week, how you're going to respond to God's love and love those around you. But let's pray, shall we? God, we thank you that you have loved us, that this love is real and deep and true and tangible, that we can see it described in your word, that we can see it in the world. Thank you for dying for us, for paying the price for our wrongdoings so that we may be made right with you. Help us to respond rightly to that love, in love to those around us and to you. Help us to remember that we are loved by you and all that that means. Amen.